After the release of License to Kill in 1989, a 6-year hiatus began. The hiatus itself, the background behind how and why it came to be, is complicated. However, the previous longest gap between Bond films was only 3 years, so it gives you an idea of how long this hiatus was. License to Kill, while it is much more popular nowadays due in part to the Craig era, at the time audience reactions to the Dalton era were decidedly mixed. Critics were mostly happy, but long-time audiences weren't universally praising the films. The films were very much ahead of their time. Nowadays, it's a very different story in terms of what people think of them. License to Kill also underperformed at the box office due to various reasons. It grossed $156.1 million. Dalton stepped down from the role in 1994, so an opportunity to refresh the franchise presented itself. Liam Neeson, Hugh Grant and Paul McGann were offered the role, but it was Pierce Brosnan who was finally cast as James Bond. Pierce Brosnan came very close to being cast as Bond in 1987, but his commitments to Remington Steele paved the way for Dalton to get the role. Brosnan's casting fulfilled a long-held ambition and marked a change in the tone for the series. Goldeneye was released on the 17th of November 1995. It was the first Bond film to be directed by Martin Campbell. Goldeneye is regarded by many as one of the very best Bond films. After a 6-year hiatus, the series returned with a confidently made outing. Goldeneye is a strikingly modern film. It's aged very well and is a big visual improvement over the previous outings. Technology had clearly come some way since 1989, as several scenes in Goldeneye look like they were shot yesterday. Martin Campbell as director and Phil Mahue as cinematographer both did an outstanding job. The set design from Peter Lamont is also very good. He'd been the production designer on several Bond films previously, but the sets in this film are particularly good. Pierce Brosnan is fantastic in his on-screen debut as James Bond. His line delivery is sublime during any scene, whether he's making a one-liner or just spouting exposition. Brosnan's great during the action sequences, the quieter dialogue-driven scenes, any scene. Brosnan nails it. Goldeneye was the first Bond film to star Judi Dench as M and Samantha Bond as Miss Moneypenny. Both do a great job in their respective roles. Miss Moneypenny as a character appears to have been modernised in this film, and it's refreshing to see Moneypenny written in this way. Judi Dench is fantastic in her few scenes as M. In every scene she's in, she owns the scene, and Bond, Tanner, and any other character almost disappear into the background. Desmond Llewellyn appears once again as Q, the only one of the MI6 regulars not to be recast, and thank goodness. Llewellyn is fantastic as usual and works brilliantly alongside Brosnan. Sean Bean as Alex Trevelyan is a brilliant villain, and unlike anyone we've seen before or since. Sean Bean is great in the scenes with Brosnan, both in the pre-title sequence and much later in the movie when Trevelyan reappears. Alan Cumming is great as Boris. Every scene he in is just great. Goldeneye is a brilliant James Bond outing, and for the most part, audiences agree. The film grossed $352 million, a huge improvement over any film since Moonraker. Goldeneye had a budget of $60 million, so the film was most certainly a financial success. So after 6 years, James Bond was back with a bang, and the audience were keen for more 007 adventures. Goldeneye was the first James Bond film to be produced by Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, although Michael G. Wilson had co-produced alongside Barbara Broccoli from A View to a Kill to License to Kill. In this sense, among many others, Goldeneye marked the start of a new era. The producing partnership of Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson continues to this day. Barbara Broccoli, the man responsible alongside Harry Saltzman for starting the series, had a minimal involvement with Goldeneye due to his failing health. Barbara Broccoli was a consulting producer for Goldeneye. In June 1996, Barbara Broccoli passed away. His contribution to the James Bond film series and cinema as a whole cannot be understated. Without Barbara Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, there may not have been a Bond film series at all. Tomorrow Never Dies, Pierce Brosnan's second James Bond film, was released on the 12th of December 1997 and was directed by Robert Spottiswoode. Tomorrow Never Dies is a moderately entertaining Bond film. It doesn't exactly reinvent the Bond formula, but nobody should expect it to. It's a fun and engaging Bond film in that role. It does a pretty great job. Pierce Brosnan is once again great as James Bond, as indeed are the rest of the returning MI6 regulars. Colin Salmon is pretty good as Charles Robinson, his first of 3 Bond films. Salmon doesn't get much screen time and his character is pretty much the same as Michael Kitchen's Bill Tanner, but that aside, Salmon is still great. Jonathan Pryce as Elliot Carver makes for a fairly interesting villain. His performance is brilliant and Carver's death scene is particularly fantastic with some top-notch sound design. Michelle Yeoh as Wei Lin is a rather great Bond girl and probably one of the most underrated. Yeoh works well alongside Brosnan and Wei Lin is well written. Tomorrow Never Dies is a tad forgettable. Not bad, and as a way to kill 2 hours or so, it's great, but it's hardly the most in-depth and layered Bond film in the world. A lot of the great elements in Goldeneye aren't repeated here, and by comparison, Tomorrow Never Dies Days doesn't even come close to Goldeneye in terms of quality. Tomorrow Never Dies went up against Titanic, which was, as we all know, a huge financial success, becoming at the time the highest grossing film of all time. With that in mind, Tomorrow Never Dies had some stiff competition. It was the only Pierce Brosnan Bond film not to open at #1 at the box office. But in terms of the final box office takings, while Tomorrow Never Dies was a long way behind Titanic, it was a financial success anyway. It grossed $333 million from a budget of $110 million, making it a moderate success. It was also the 4th highest grossing film of 1997. The World Is Not Enough was released on the 19th of November 1999 and was directed by Michael Apted. Pierce Brosnan is once again brilliant as James Bond. It's quite possibly his best performance since Goldeneye. Judi Dench's M gets plenty of screen time this outing, and this may be the Bond film with the most M screen time until 2012 Skyfall. Judi Dench's performance is fantastic, a very underrated performance. The cast in The World Is Not Enough is very good. Sophie McCrory, Robbie Coltrane, and Robert Carlyle to name but a few. Sophie Mosso as Electra King makes for a great villain, as does Robert Carlyle as Renard, even if his character is a tad underused at times. Robbie Coltrane returns, having previously appeared in Goldeneye. His character, Valentine Tarkovsky, is wonderfully written, and Coltrane has a great on-screen dynamic with Brosnan. Coltrane gets a fair amount of screen time in this one, and quite a bit more than in Goldeneye. Valentine is a great character, and really adds a lot to the 007 world. The World Is Not Enough is an improvement over Tomorrow Never Dies, but lags far behind Goldeneye, which remains the peak of the Brosnan era. The World Is Not Enough has a pretty good plot, and most of the action sequences are as thrilling as you'd expect from the very best ones in the series. However, a lot of the film does feel quite underwhelming. Some scenes do feel a tad cliche and by the numbers. Over the years, criticism has been directed at the casting of Denise Richards as Dr. Christmas Jones, the main Bond girl. I've heard people say that Christmas Jones is the worst Bond girl. Having watched that, I can say that Christmas Jones is a decent Bond girl. Denise Richards is perhaps miscast, but does an alright job overall, and Jones is by no means the worst Bond girl. At times, Christmas Jones is a bit of a background character, but that's only a minor gripe. The World Is Not Enough received mixed reviews at the time and continues to divide opinion. It was, however, a financial success. It grossed $361.8 million from a budget of $135 million, making a moderate financial success. The World Is Not Enough marked the final appearance of Desmond Llewellyn as Q. He only appears in 2 scenes or so, and his final scene is perfect. Llewellyn's performance and Brosnan's are very nicely done, and I can't find any faults in it whatsoever. Q's on-screen replacement, unofficially dubbed as R by Bond, was played by John Cleese. It's a tad strange to see such a giant of popular culture and comedy appearing in a real Bond film and not some sort of parody. Cleese, in his brief scenes as R, does a good job overall, mainly acting as a comedic foil. The World Is Not Enough was not intended to be Llewellyn's final Bond film. His Q was intended to be phased out gradually, with Cleese's character taking up more of the expository dialogue. Sadly, Desmond was killed in a car crash a month or so after the premiere of The World Is Not Enough, thus adding greater significance to his final scene. Die Another Day was released on the 20th of November 2002 and was directed by Lee Tamahori. Die Another Day is, however, one of the worst Bond films, if not the worst. The cast are great, however. Pierce Brosnan is as brilliant as he always is, Toby Stephens is clearly having an absolute blast as Gustav Graves, and his scenes with Brosnan are great. Halle Berry and Rosamund Pike are also rather good on screen, and the MI6 regulars Judi Dench, Samantha Bond, John Cleese, and Colin Salmon are brilliant also. Die Another Day does have some good qualities. The pre-title sequence is quite good, but after that, you'll be hard-pressed to find genuinely good things in the film. The song is atrocious, it doesn't suit Bond at all, and Madonna's vocals sound dreadful. I get a sense that Lee Tamahori doesn't understand Bond and what makes Bond work. There are a lot of gadgets in this film, not like many other outings, but the wit and charm feels lacking, no matter how great Brosnan and his co-stars are. In many instances, Die Another Day seems like a Bond parody. The invisible car is cool and everything, but maybe a notch too far when it comes to the gadgets. I rarely get a sense of genuine peril or danger, and the action sequences for the most part I feel are very undercooked. Die Another Day was the final Brosnan Bond film, and what a shame. His contract ran for 4 films, but there's always the possibility of a contract extension where he could have eventually appeared in 5 or even 6 Bond films. The Brosnan era before this one was pretty entertaining. Not perfect, but nothing that feels un-Bondian. It'll always be a great shame that this is how the Brosnan era ended, going out with a whimper rather than a bang. The next film, Casino Royale, was a reboot, so this also marked the end of 40 years of this original Bond timeline. That further worsens Die Another Day for me. It wasn't intended to be the final Bond film of this continuity before a reboot at the time, but that does ruin an already poor viewing experience. 40 years of Bond are marked in a fairly decent way, and some references are tad on the nose, but they're well-meaning, so why not? But Die Another Day is bad, the final scene with Moneypenny and Q being a particular highlight. But it was a financial success. It grossed $431.9 million from a budget of $142 million, making it a moderately successful film, partly down to the hype of the 40th anniversary. So that concludes the Pierce Brosnan era. An era which, barring the last film, was pretty great. Pierce Brosnan may not be my favourite Bond, but he was still fantastic as 007. His performance never faltered. In every scene, Brosnan was on point. The Brosnan era feels very much of its time, but also very modern and possibly timeless.